Welcome to ChamberChats, the Halifax Chamber's new podcast where we check in with the local business community, ask government the tough questions, and find ways to save your business money. For the foreseeable future, we're focusing on COVID-19 and the economic impact we're facing, along with available resources and tales of resiliency. Coming to you from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Halifax Chamber's new podcast, ChamberChats. I'm Patrick Sullivan, President and CEO of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, and your host for today. ChamberChats is a new way to engage with our members and keep them up to date on the important things happening in our city of Halifax. Today, we're switching gears a little bit. We're going to talk about the anti-racism protests happening around the world. After George Floyd's death on May 25th, we saw an eruption of protests. The protests want those in power to address systemic racism, police brutality, and anti-Black sentiments. We're looking for major changes in how our police forces, our courts, and our governments support the continued oppression of the Black community. A member reached out to us and wanted to talk more about this inequality and what we can do to fix it. Marvin Okello was born in Kenya, and in 1996, he, his three sisters, and his parents left as refugees and moved to Fredericton, New Brunswick. They moved to Lower Sackville in 2001 before eventually settling in Bedford in 2006. Marvin played soccer growing up on the Nova Scotia provincial teams under 13, 14, 15, 16, and went on to the Canada Games, Summer Games in 2005 for soccer. He went to Dalhousie University to study English and worked in retail as a sales manager for several years. In the fall of 2018, he began working for the Halifax Wanderers as their first ever brand ambassador. He was then asked to be ticket sales manager full-time. As someone who's lived through all sorts of situations, including civil war, refugee camps, and PTSD, Marvin felt the need to use his platform to stand against racism with the recent unfortunate death of George Floyd. The Halifax Wanderers have allowed him to speak up about anti-racism because they are a club who thrives on diversity and celebrates their differences. The club welcomes people from all walks of life to our grounds in the spirit of coming together as one community to enjoy football or the beautiful game. Welcome, Marvin, and thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Well, no, it's great to talk to you. This must be a difficult time for so many reasons at this point. The Wanderers had a spectacular season last year. I know I went to a few games. It was wonderful. The crowd was very enthusiastic, but it's been a difficult time with COVID-19. How is the team coping?
Yes, definitely. Well, I'm glad to hear that you did take in a game last year. It exceeded our expectations on many levels with it being our first year, but we were really looking forward to going and growing on the great start we had last year. And, unfortunately, because of COVID, that didn't happen. But we've really shifted our focus to our community, who really was our 12th man last year at the Wanderers grounds and allowed us to have some great results against some teams maybe we wouldn't have been able to compete against otherwise. So we were really happy. And right now we've shifted to making sure that we're taking care of our members and our partners and our sponsors and everyone in our general community in lack of a season. So it's something that we've always, from the beginning, talked that we wanted to be a big part of in the community in Halifax, and we're just kind of, living the words that we preach now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been on the website, and there's still ways you can participate. I think you can even get Halifax Wanderers face masks right now.
Yes. So we did partner up with United Way, and we made these amazing Wanderers face masks to cover, obviously, for COVID-19, but with United Way getting 100% of the proceeds. That's the Halifax division of the United Way. So, we're really happy with how many people have already purchased. And if you're interested, you can go on our website and purchase directly from there. Or we have our fan shop that recently opened on Quinpool. It's open on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 to 6 p.m., as well as on Saturdays, 11 to 2. And I'm usually in there. So if you want to come by and say hello and purchase some face masks, I'd be happy to see you.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, I will be sure to get in to the new shop. Now on to slightly more serious topics, I suppose. The the Wanderers. Tell us about your work with the Wanderers and what the organization is doing to make sure you continue to be anti-racist while being inclusive.
Definitely. As you said in your intro there, our team has always been very diverse. We have players from Trinidad, Germany. We have players from Italy. Last year, we guys who played in Australia. So we have a very, very diverse team, and we're really owning that in light of recent events with what happened to George Floyd. A lot of, you know, a lot of times sports thinks that you can't have a voice in such manners like political manners, but it's actually the opposite. I mean, we embody the fact that diversity is important, and we wouldn't be as successful as we were last year if we weren't as diverse as we are. So we've acknowledged that, and we've had a few things we've done. We started off with a Zoom call with both our players, our staff. We invited our members, we invited fans, and just the general public, just to have a conversation about what is happening in light of the events with George Floyd. And it ended up being a great conversation. We had some things come out of it, such as one of our passionate super fans, Missy Searle. She had an experience last year, actually, a racist experience at the grounds, and she didn't want at the time to make a big deal out of it, which is something that it's tough for African Canadians, even like myself. Sometimes you just really want to push it under the rug because you don't know if you speak up, if anything's going to happen. And we were really happy that she brought it up to our attention on that Zoom call with everybody. And I've taken the role of being the first diversity officer for our team. And I've been putting together a diversity board, which includes members, it includes sponsors, partners, and people in our community who are also educated on the topic. And outside of that, we're making sure that we're instilling policies that will continue long after even any of us as staff move on. So we're really laying a foundation that we can be proud of, and at a grassroots level, just educating kids in the soccer community so that they take an anti-racism stance. And we've even partnered with a local Black-owned business, Creations by Kai. So when you go into the store on Quinpool, we have a Black Lives Matter shirts that you can purchase to embody our stance that is anti-racism.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, that's a lot to unpack right there. There's a lot of things that you're doing. I mean, just to dig into the incident that happened with Missy. So was it a patron or another patron, or I mean, I don't need to get into the details, but how did you go about examining that, and how did you try to solve that issue, I guess, or how can you solve that issue going forward?
So we've been very vocal about the fact that if anything happens going forward, and we have channels that people can communicate to us, and our ticketing staff and our ushers have all been trained actually on diversity and making sure that we're not allowing any sort of racism or prejudice statements or actions to take place at the grounds. And we have a zero tolerance policy. So if anybody comes to the Wanderers grounds and starts to make anybody feel like they're not welcome there, such as Missy and other people, because to be more specific, there was a few people behind her who were making monkey chants towards some of the players, some of the Black players on the field. And she, at the time, just turned around and gave them a very hard glare. And at the time it stopped, but that's not enough. So we have already trained our staff, and unfortunately she didn't at the time get a chance to talk to one of our ushers so that we could have taken the appropriate action, because it is a sensitive topic. But in the future, we're going to make it so there's an easy process, so that if it happens, you can go talk to one of our ushers, one of our security, and then we can remove the person from the premises immediately.
That sounds great. I mean, the team really is. It's it's a snapshot of the world, if you will. It's people from all around the globe who are participating in the team, and of course, there's people of African descent on the team. How do you sort of have that conversation with the players, or are they even aware of? And maybe it's a silly question, but are they aware of racism in Canada if they come from other markets, or do they suffer from racism in their home markets?
Yeah, a lot of them weren't really aware of the level of it in Canada, because here, as it's been very vocalized by a lot of activists like Dorico Simmons here, who's one of the more um, vocal activists here in Halifax. It's systemic here in Halifax, so it's a bit tougher to see. But a lot of our players, such as our new assistant goalkeeper coach Jan Michaels, he spoke about some things that happened to him when he was traveling. He's from Trinidad and he was traveling to Europe, and he was denied service just because of his skin color. And that allowed us to, share with other players on the team who have had maybe lesser incidents, but everyone has felt the impact of racism in one way or another, and it's just a matter of talking about it. And in a lot of ways, for me, it's been therapeutic, having these educational conversations and being able to get a lot of things off my chest that have happened both in the just day-to-day life of Halifax, but also in the sports world that I've had growing up. So it's been very, very well received, and it's only just the beginning. We're going to continue.
So, I mean, for our listeners, I mean, there's a lot of, I think sometimes, I'm a white male. I think sometimes there's just a lack of awareness about what a young Black male may go through. I mean, can you tell us about some of the systemic racism that you may have seen in Halifax while you've been growing up?
Definitely, definitely. You're right, and that's why we've taken the first step is to educate, because as you've just indicated, a lot of people aren't aware of what happens as maybe a white male or a white female here in Halifax. But from 2001, right when I arrived here, it's very noticeable as somebody who is very social and outgoing, and I'm always trying to make friends with people, that right off the bat, some people just give you certain looks and that treat you differently than some of your friends who are Caucasian. So I've had things from being followed at the grocery store from a young age when I'm by myself, going to purchase things at the Dollarama or whatever it may be, just security constantly being over my shoulder. Going into my university days where we go downtown with some friends, and at the end of the night you're trying to pick up a taxi, and there was times where I had to hide until my friends were able to hail a cab, and then I would pop out and then go in the cab, because cab drivers would just drive by if they see an African Canadian. So it's there's so many levels to it that it's tough to give all the examples, but those are just a few of just the day-to-day examples that happen to even here in Halifax.
Yeah, I mean, when I listen to people and try to share, yeah, I mean, it's obviously I don't have much to share, but but even just the awareness of a I spoke to a young Black man, and he said, I've been stopped by the police X number of times for something, and I mean, the reality is I rarely, if ever, been stopped by the police. So it's just something that you just need to recognize. You've used the word systemic. I mean, it really is a systemic issue. And is something, when you had your conversation with the group on the Zoom call, what was the response to that conversation on inclusivity?
It was great. People just wanted to learn more, know more, and see how they could help. Our Wanderers community is very, it's like a family. It's something that I've been very happy to be a part of from the beginning, because even if you look at our office staff, we have myself, who's from Kenya, and Uganda actually was where my parents were born. I have a coworker, Denai Yatru, who has a Greek background, and ironically, her dad actually was born in Kenya as well. I have Steve Hart, who's from Trinidad and Tobago, who's our head coach. Masut Mert, who's now our assistant coach. He's got a Turkish background. So it's very obvious that it's important to acknowledge first that we are different, and those differences make up our strength. And our team, again, you touched on the point that we have players from Africa. Last year I believe we had all 7 continents represented on our team. Uh, so you have to acknowledge first who you are, what you stand for, which we did. And by using the word inclusivity, we invited not just our fans, but we invited our sponsors, we invited our partners, and we had a panel that included females, Black females, myself, like as a Black male, we had white males, and we really tried to touch on all the different demographics so that everyone's opinion was heard. And then from that, everyone on that Zoom call that we initially had, there was lots of resources being shared in the chats, and we've created a webpage actually on our website. So if you go on the Wanderers website and under community, there's a lot of educational resources as well as the Zoom call that we had that day, so you can watch it back and learn from our conversation.
Yeah, I was actually on the website this morning and saw just that. I mean, there's reading resources, there's video resources, and I thought that was really helpful. For people who don't know the background or who are trying to be allies to the community. I think it's really important for them to take a look at some of those resources and then understand the struggle that has been going on for so long that should have changed so long ago. I noticed that the Wanderer staff recognized Juneteenth as a holiday, and staff had the day off. Can you tell us more about that holiday?
Yes, and Juneteenth was something that is not really that well known about. So by us taking that day off, I think it really encouraged a lot of other people in the community and other people to even just look up what it means, and it is also known as Freedom Day, the Liberation Day, Emancipation Day, but it's a holiday celebrating the emancipation of those who had been enslaved in the U.S. and in the greater, Black community. So we really thought that was something we could take as another action, because there's a lot of right now people sharing things on social media and whatnot, but it's important to follow up educating yourself and all these sharing of links with actual action. So that's an action we took that really we hope is a step in the right direction. And some of our club partners in the local community, like Halifax City, they end up having a Zoom call as well to discuss how they could be anti-racist. Our assistant coach, Masut Mert, invited me because he also coaches the St. Mary's football team as well, the men's soccer team. And so I was able to speak to some of the players and just let them know a little bit about my experiences and how they can lead on this topic as well.
Oh, that's great. I think Freedom Day is probably more descriptive, but Juneteenth, and I think we've learned a lot about Juneteenth over the last little while, simply because it did seem to be a much broader celebration this year, and there was a significant lack of awareness, I suppose, in the United States at some levels about what the holiday represented. What can we do as a community? I mean, there are many, and you've mentioned your store. You've mentioned the Black-owned businesses that you're supporting inside the store. What can we as a community, or what can we as the Chamber of Commerce do to support Black-owned businesses in our community?
I mean, there's really three important things to do here. It's educate yourselves using links like we provided on our website, because if you don't know, there's not really much you can do properly without first educating yourself. So I encourage all the business owners in Halifax, people who, employees, just everyone in the greater HRM community, just to educate themselves first. And I'll challenge them even further to not necessarily reach out to your African Canadian friends to educate yourselves, because I'll be honest, like I recently had to let go all of my social media. It was becoming overwhelming just how many people were reaching out to me to educate them in 2020 when we have all sorts of resources such as the internet and libraries. So I really want to emphasize that point, that don't just reach out to your Black friends or African Canadian friends and ask them, hey, like educate me. It's not their responsibility. It's your responsibility as visible Caucasians, as whatever else. Just make sure you educate yourself first, and there's lots of resources on the internet. So after that, I would say you need to buy things from Black businesses. So like we've done, we've partnered with Creations by Kai, and we've provided shirts that other people can come and support by buying in our store. It's important to give actual funds and support the Black community and help their businesses grow, because there are a lot of great Black-owned businesses in Halifax. And my sister, Emma Bokama, actually used to work with BBI, Black Business Initiative, and she's been a great educator for myself over the last 10 years in terms of just what businesses I can go to and support. And after that, it's share. You want to share those products. So after you go and you buy a T-shirt from maybe our store that says Black Lives Matter, share that with your friends. Tell them, hey, the Halifax Wanderers are offering these great shirts, and it's a strong message that I support and I encourage other people to do. So that for me is the three things: is educate yourself, buy and actually support the Black-owned businesses, and then share those products that you buy with other people and share that message with other people.
That's great. Okay. Well, I think that's great advice. I really like. I mean, I like all the points, but I think educate yourself is so important. And we've talked about your website and the pages there. I mean, those are great resources to start with, but I'm sure there's more. But yeah, it's not the responsibility of every African Canadian to educate every Caucasian. I think it is up to that Caucasian community, if there is a Caucasian community, to educate themselves and to understand the struggle and what systemic racism means, and of course to support the businesses. I didn't realize that Emma was your sister. I've known Emma for a long time.
Oh, really? Small world.
used to see her at Halifax, right? But used to see her at BBI, and now she's at the McPhee Center, I think.
She is. My sister is a role model for me in so many ways, and it's crazy how much she's come out of her shell. Like, a lot of people don't know that Emma is really, really introverted, and through BBI, they've really allowed her to open up and be vocal, and she's become a very outspoken person in a lot of ways. And I'm really proud to see my sister's growth, and it's encouraged myself to grow as an individual as well. So it's great to know that you've interacted with her before, and just goes to show how small Halifax is.
Well, yes, and honestly, Emma got a lot of things done when we partnered with BBI, and really admire her for taking on the lead role at the McPhee Center, and I know she's doing great work there. But how can we have sort of tough conversations with people who want to be allies, or tough conversations with our family, friends? How do we, who want to be allies, again, engage with people to encourage them to be a supporter of to support Black Lives Matter, or to support the end to systemic racism? What can we do?
Well, that's why I think it's really important to, as I said, buy things that physically show and start the conversation. Because if you're walking around with a Black Lives Matter T-shirt, I'm sure there's going to be some of your friends who are going to ask, where did you get that, and why did you get that? So it's a small step that you can make, even if you're an introvert and maybe you're not, really willing to go out of your way to talk to people about it. But if you just buy a shirt, it'll naturally start that conversation. And the second is, when we had our Zoom call, I actually sent the invite to all of my ticketing staff. A lot of them are high school age and first year university, and I think it's really important to get the younger group involved, because a lot of them go through some of these situations, be it the Black ones, but also the Caucasian ones, who would just see their Black friends mistreated and they don't know why or how they can support them. So I sent some of my ticketing staff the link, and luckily a few of them actually hopped on the call. And after they sent me an email, one of them said, I watched the call just by myself, and then after I talked to my parents about how we can be involved. And she challenged her parents to have that conversation in their living room, and just, why isn't this something we talk about? Why isn't this something we learn about in school? And I was really, really proud of that staff, and I'm encouraging that other people, don't just talk about it among your peers who are adults. Have the tough conversations with your kids, because racism is taught, and we have to start with the young generation and make sure that they're aware that this is an issue, so that it's not something that ends after our generation moves on and then the next generation just repeats. Because as Derico Simmons quoted, history repeats itself because the present doesn't listen.
It's a great quote. Do you think do you think we're entering a better time? Do you think the protests, the fact that they're not just protests of African Canadians who are saying this is a problem, they're protests that are much broader than that. I think they're including many people of color, but they're also including Caucasian and other groups. Do you think that there's a change happening that will continue?
I really do think that. I'm really seeing a lot of changes, and even specifically in Halifax, there's that armored truck that was going to be bought, which they decided to change the funds over to more more logical, in my opinion, efforts, because I really don't see the reason why we needed an armored truck in Halifax to begin with. But just making smart decisions about where we spend our money is a great start, and I was really happy to see that was taken very quickly, swift action. And I'm not sure who exactly was responsible for it. I didn't get a chance to actually dive into it, but I'm really happy to see that even something like that has changed. And you mentioned earlier in the call that Black people do get pulled over a lot more than any other group, and that's another thing that I'm really hoping changes over the next little while, because I've had my parents been pulled over and they've come home frustrated because there was somebody speeding past them and the cop ignored them and pulled over my parents, and just little things like that I'm really hoping will continue to change. But I have seen already a lot of change, not just in the HRM, but globally. I don't know if you watch the English Premier League, but they have taken a very strong stance by replacing the names on the back of the jerseys of the players with the Black Lives Matter statement. And from what I'm reading, the NBA is looking to do the same once they reopen there. So there's a massive change happening. And even in Halifax, there's actually there's one lady, I forget her name, but she's looking to get a mural of Black Lives Matter painted across, I believe it's Spring Garden Road. So that is something, again, that we can support. There's a GoFundMe page. The last time I checked, it was well over $5,000. And that's another way that people can support and have a physical embodiment of this movement in Halifax, so that it's, again, a reason for people to talk about it.
That sounds great. I think you kind of answered my final question, which is long term. What can we do in our personal and business lives to continue to be anti-racist? I mean, are there additional things that we can do to try and again support and change some of the unconscious biases, perhaps that we may have in our own lives?
Definitely. We've done a great job at the Wanderers of being inclusive in our hiring process. So we make sure that we're not just hiring mostly Caucasian people. We're being very diverse and making sure we're getting females, we're getting males, we're getting Asians, we're getting a broad group, and we're inclusive of everybody. So that is one thing that I think a lot more businesses should look at. When you're in your hiring process, how can you include diversity to make sure there's almost like a checkbox of different diversity, so you don't look like you're not trying. And that's one very small step. The others, obviously, is just continuing to educate both your staff, as well as being careful about who you partner with. So you have to educate yourselves on what the businesses you want to partner with, what they stand for, so that you're not partnering with businesses that have a negative message. Recently, there was 9Locks took a lot of backlash for their owner having some posts on Twitter that were racist, and not necessarily towards the Black community, but that's a business that I personally am not going to partner with anymore. I'm not going to support. I'm not going to buy any of their products going forward. So small steps like that go a long way.
Yeah, well, that certainly sends a message. Absolutely. Well, Marvin, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I think we should do it again. I don't often do these things again, but I think we should do it again, maybe in another 3 or 4 months.
I'm definitely up for it. Yes. Yeah. I really appreciate your willingness to do that, because it is something that I hope is continued, and it's not just, for lack of a better word, a movement like it is right now. It's something that should be a foundation that we're setting for our kids and our kids' kids and our businesses. And we're encouraging other businesses to follow our lead. So honestly, I want to thank you, Patrick, for taking the time to talk with me today. And I'm more than happy to come back on in a few months. And hopefully it's a status update that more great things have happened and will continue to.
Absolutely. And at that point, we can then talk about the Wanderers winning season too. So,
yes, exactly. Definitely.
So thanks very much. I'm going to wrap up. The anti-racism movement has had a number of powerful leaders over the last 400 years, but it's up to all of us to keep this at the top of the news cycle. Ask yourselves how you can have those anti-racism conversations with your friends. Head to BBI's website to find their Black-owned business directory. So there's a directory right there that's updated on an annual basis. And as Marvin said, do your own research and discover what it means to be a good ally. And take a look at the Wanderers website and find some of those resources right there. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you very much, Marvin, for joining me today.
Thank you, Patrick. Have a great day.
Tune in next time at halifaxchamber.com/podcast. The Halifax Chamber is in your corner.